E se eu estava muito no mar, pode acontecer agora.
Voy con más Sí, sí, igual. Yo lo gano con maestría en manera. La familia de México, ya. Ay, sí, claro, cuidado. Yo empiezo yo.
Ahí tienes.
Pues sí, creo que es lo que presentaba en la universidad. A menos yo, esto que se despierta. Creo que no me resuelvo. Sorry.
Empezamos. Okay. You want to take it? Vale.
Kevin,
Yes, please.
I'm Ian, nice to meet you. You know Esther?
Yes, I'm stepping in.
She's going to come then again. Oh, that's his certification.
You're the last one, so maybe
Okay.
you're over here.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Okay, thank you. Okay, I think we're good to start now, because it's one. Can I just start without any particular issues, striking or anything at all? Wonderful.
That's all good.
Okay, perfect. All right, good afternoon, and thank you for joining us to this wonderful conversation, this wonderful dialogue, presentation, and discussion about how young people around the world are working towards global biodiversity. The session today is led by Sustainable Ocean Alliance in partnership with the Fort Coral Pavilion, the Global Youth Biodiversity Network, and representatives from the Wildlife Conservation Society as well. Thank you so much for joining us. Without further ado, I would like to present our speakers today, our panelists. First, we have Valeria. Valeria is a biologist passionate about nature and marine life, committed to protecting the oceans and promoting their conservation. She earned her bachelor's degree in biology from the Autonomous University from Mexico and marine resource management from the Polytechnic National Institute from Mexico. Her experience includes studying the trophic, ecology of marine organisms, biochemistry of coastal lagoons, and a lot of other things. And since September 2021, she's been the hub lead for Sustainable Ocean Alliance in Mexico. Then we have Kevin Unzalu. Kevin is a marine ecologist from Kenya and the co-founder of the Kenyan Youth Biodiversity Network, a youth-led organization that harnesses the power of youth action to drive transformative solutions to the triple planetary crisis of biodiversity loss, climate change, and pollution. Through his work, Kevin is committed to empowering young people to take an active role in environmental conservation and shaping a sustainable future for communities in Kenya and beyond. We also have from Panama, Valle. Dewey is a passionate marine conservation advocate focusing particularly on coral reefs and indigenous knowledge. As the senior program manager for the Coral Reef Program at Wildlife Conservation Society, Dewey dedicates his career to protecting vulnerable marine ecosystems and closely collaborating with local communities, especially young people, especially indigenous people, apologies, to promote conservation strategies that blend modern science with traditional knowledge. And well, originally from Gunayala, Panama, his personal connection to the oceans and his indigenous heritage have been a constant source of inspiration for his work, where he combines the ancestral knowledge with scientific tools to enhance coral reef resilience in the face of climate change. And last but not least, we have Veronica. Vero is also from Mexico. She is a biologist, a socio-environmental biologist, currently focusing on some programs around raising awareness, education, and some other social issues in the coastal zone of Mexico. So with no further ado, I would like to give the floor first to Valeria, so she can present about her initiatives and what Sustainable Ocean Alliance is doing in Mexico. We're gonna do the same with the first speakers, and then we're gonna jump to a panel discussion to deep dive a little bit more in what are the goals, the challenges, and what are we doing for global biodiversity in the field of ocean conservation. Valeria, the floor is yours.
Hi, my name is Valeria. Currently I'm Mexico's hub leader of the SOE. We've been working with a huge team, about 10, 10 young people in Mexico that are around all the country. You know, Mexico is a big country. You have the Baja California Peninsula, that is our main part of the job. But also we work at the Caribbean with the Yucatan Peninsula, and some of the people of the hub, they are in Mexico City too. So we are between the two oceans that we have in our country and the main city. As you know, we have all equivalent, like in gender, we have males and females, but we were working in a lot of events that it's like globally known. But we started in 2020. You know, there was the pandemic, so all our work was in the computer. But until 2022, we'll start doing some works and projects in the Baja California Peninsula first. We've been working in the water monitoring in the desert. We evaluated with young people. We do like citizen science too. Also, we have participated in events like the UNO with the Mexican government. We give the youth, the voices of the youth to the Mexican government, so they can start changing our politics there. So we've been part of the young stakeholders in the Mexican government until the UNO. We also have working in the ISA, in the International Civil Authority, because in the last year we were working in a huge campaign against deep sea mining. As you know, Mexico used to be one of the countries that wanted to start the mining code and to start this kind of activity, but we changed it. We worked with the Mexican government, so in the last year they added to the global moratorium against deep sea mining. We have working with the Baja California Peninsula, also in Yucatan, with all the community, with children, with youth, with the government, as you see. We've been working in Todos Santos, that is in Baja California Peninsula. Also in Costa Rica, this year we participated in the Immersion Change and Latin America Azul. It was the first event of Latin young people to talk about the ocean. Also, we have worked with coral restoration in Cozumel, in the Caribbean of Mexico. We've been working with the restoration and also with the eradication of the sargassum in that zone. You know, in the Caribbean, we have a lot of issues about the sargassum, and we were working with some part of the government and also with new initiatives that have started by young people too. As you know, we worked in the UNOC about 2 years ago. We plan to go again the next year in Nice to show all the work that we've been doing. Also, we talked with the FAO director. in the UNO. And this is a campaign against deep sea mining. You know, Mexico. In Mexico, we have one of the boats of the mining, huge mining company that is called the Eventos company, and we made with Greenpeace and another associated NGOs a huge campaign, like around 16 NGOs in Mexico. So we start pushing the Mexican government to change their mind against deep sea mining, and we made it in this past November. So we've been working with the Mexican government again with this issue. We right now here in COP16, I'm currently with the Mexican government participating and bringing the voices of all Mexican youth. And yeah, we have built several alliances in Mexico that NGOs that works with the ocean conservation, also with sharks conservation, turtles conservation in both of the peninsulas of Mexico. So yeah, we are trying to expand all these alliances and continue starting to search for more funding because you know Mexico is a big country, so it's not that easy to have a lot of investment or financial support for our projects. And yeah, thank you. If you want to follow us in Instagram or Facebook, there's our accounts.
Thank you, Olivia. Thank you for showing us how Mexican youth are working towards conservation and also creating these wonderful alliances. And also bringing the ocean voices to COP, I think it's very important, especially when it comes to understand how oceans plays a pivotal role in not only decreasing the impacts that our activities has on the environment, but also supporting our efforts as humanity to decrease pollution and some other issues that we're facing. Okay.
Request that I start here. Absolutely, thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ken. I come from Kenya. I have the privilege of representing my colleague Esther, who is not here with us. My organization is the Kenyan Youth Biodiversity Network, which is a chapter of the Global Youth Biodiversity Network. We started in 2017, very inorganically to bring young people together to respond to conservation issues within the Kenyan landscape. And so our key priority areas is ocean, especially on restoration of degraded seascapes. So we focus mostly on mangroves, but also we do policies or interventions at the national and international level, creating awareness, and we also have a project on marine plastics. What I'm going to present today is our project on the Kenyan South Coast at a place called Usambweni, which is this little location there, south of a place called Mombasa. I'm sorry for people who can't see, but it's just like the lower end of the Kenyan map to the south. And what we're doing there is we are trying to galvanize civil society efforts that are youth-led to restore degraded mangrove ecosystems. So the story is that Kenya has been on a rapid decline in terms of like mangrove numbers because of several issues. One of them being, the direct reliance, but also because of, climatic issues and also the sea use of the coastal shores and all this. And so what we did is to start a program that will engage local communities to try and restore as much as we could, starting with the Kenyan South Coast. And currently our target is to plant 100,000 mangroves across a time frame of 5 years. So we go beyond just growing mangroves because there are different species of mangroves and also requirements for mangrove growth. But we underline the role of policy in all this. So apart from just growing mangroves, we also want our government to have stronger policies on coastal restoration in general beyond just mangroves. And so we formulate statements that we front to the Kenyan government through the CBD, because CBD is easier for us now that Gibeon is the official youth constituency to the CBD, but we are also accredited by UNEP. And some of you might know UNEP has its headquarters in Nairobi in Kenya, And so we try to utilize that platform as well to engage, national government or also international governments to look at targets that are directly talking to coastal restoration. So target 2, for example, on restoration generally, target 3 on 30 by 30, also on climate change, target 7, and other tools and solutions targets, so like target 19 on resources, 20 on capacity, and our home target, which is target 22 on youth engagement. And so, as I mentioned, these are some of the targets that we have been following, and engaging the CBD at different meetings beyond just the COP. This was during the SABSTA and SBI meeting that happened in Nairobi during this year before we came here for this CBD COP16. For this COP16, we are also with the Kenyan delegation. As I'm presenting to right now, the Kenyan delegation is meeting somewhere, but our aim is to have this bilateral so that we can have as much of the youth priorities go through the national priorities and also the regional priorities, the African group of negotiators, because it's very hard to have these priorities, coming directly into the international space. So we try to utilize this national level, local level bilaterals. In terms of the sustainable development goals, we try to respond to goals that touch on life in water, but also directly on development, because coastal restoration is also about coastal development. So you have to look at all the underlying factors that are driving coastal degradation, and so we try to work on SDGs that directly speak to that. And we've been able to earn an award. This has not come without challenges. So, if you come from the global south, already you face some of the impeding challenges in terms of scaling, in terms of accessing resources, capacity. But if you come from the global south and in a developing country, then the challenges are even double. And if you're a youth organization in a developing country in the global south, then the challenges are triple. So these are some of the challenges, but we have also been trying to navigate them using the power of innovation, the power of collective youth action, the power of collaboration. As I mentioned, we don't just do this alone as KYDN. We do this with communities. As you can see in that picture, there is a woman from the local community who is also helping with the management of our mangrove nurseries, and that has helped us to create this intergenerational action towards restoration of coastal areas. We've been able to learn a few lessons. So one is engaging our community is really key. Working collaboratively with other civil society organizations, other organizations, and going beyond just the scope of what you do. Those within the increased space, my colleague Esther, even though we currently don't have a specific program for, but she has been really, really actively engaging within the increased space to see how we can bring that to our action. So we also have, we realize that there's a need to have a plan, like what is the long-term restoration goal, and every time evaluate the progress. As I conclude, I don't know if I went to someone's slides, but those are not my slides. Should I go with this? Back home. Good. So field activities and growing our networks are, our next steps that we see, and then go this way, and then and then exploring more benefit for the coastal communities. As I mentioned, one of the drivers of this ecosystem losses is the direct dependence and also the cost of development. So how can we restore coastal areas in a way that also benefits directly the communities, so that they see incentives in maintaining these spaces? So ecotourism, creating green jobs for youth, and also just building our internal capacity as an organization. And I think that is all that I had. Just like my colleague here, we are also very active online, and you can contact us and connect with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kevin. really important. And thank you for bringing that also, that reflection around how hard and how challenging it is for young people, especially in developing countries and in the so-called global south, to access funding. Because researchers or studies have shown that less than 1% of the whole global philanthropy fund for projects, for climate-related projects, less than 1% goes to young people or to youth-led projects. That's why trust-based philanthropy and some other types of investment for young people are extremely necessary. And in the field of biodiversity, we still don't know how much of the 100% funding goes to youth-led initiatives. That's why it's extremely important to bring young people to these spaces and to have these conversations and discussions. So thank you for bringing that as well. The floor is all yours.
And to continue talking about how we can integrate young people, I'm going to talk about the power that youth have in terms of protecting and helping climate resilient reefs, and that's what we're doing mostly at WCS, trying to protect these reefs that can survive to the extreme conditions that we are putting them into. And to make this a little bit more interactive, I want you to look at this picture and tell me what you see. Any of you, quickly.
Hammerhead.
A hammerhead, yes. What else?
Unity.
Sorry? A boat, yeah. It's actually my traditional boat from Panama. And that hammerhead is a hammerhead that I saw when I was 7 years old. But that was the last time that I saw a hammerhead. And it was dead when I saw it. So since I was a little kid, I started realizing how we were losing our biodiversity and how our actions were affecting negatively our grandmother, because in my culture we believe the ocean is our grandmother. But with this picture I see many other things. I see interconnectedness of life, and we know now, scientists have told us that in order to survive as a species, we have to protect the nature and the ocean. I see a lot of cultural significance and how indigenous wisdom has highlighted in the past ties that we have with the ocean, and maybe that lack of connection with nature and the ocean is what's causing some of the problems that we have right now. But also conservation and stewardship, how we can balance that traditional knowledge with more scientists and new scientist knowledge that can bring solutions to the problems we are facing. This picture that I showed you before was made actually to illustrate some of the work that I've been doing and to use art as a means to communicate the problem. Right now, I work as the Coral Reef Program Manager for Wildlife Conservation Society. We have programs in 18 countries that are working with corals, either through marine protected areas, through sustainable livelihood, or similar actions. And in this work that I've been doing the last 7 months, I've also identified that in order to develop a strategy, a global strategy for the organization, where we take into account youth people, there are 3 important aspects to consider. And this is something that I realized while visiting the programs, while visiting the countries. I was in the Western Indian Ocean, for example, and even though Wildlife Conservation Society is trying to hire and to integrate local people, it's often very difficult because there are no biologists that are locals. But when you go deeper, the local people don't swim, they don't dive, they don't have the knowledge to actually become biologists, for example. So capacity building is very important, especially in some countries when there is none. And we're focusing, for example, now in Tanzania and Mozambique, in paying for our local staff to learn how to swim. Imagine, like, for some of us, swimming is something natural, but for them it's not. And then also some of them that are diving, we're paying them their courses so they can increase their diving abilities. And maybe in 10 years, we can have more biologists from the region. But then we also find very important to pay for the opportunities of youth, especially in developing countries. If you have an internship in Switzerland, for example, it's very different to having an internship in Latin America or Africa. And we believe that you should pay the youth, and the internships and the entry positions should be paid, because otherwise it's not sustainable. And then multi-generational collaboration is always key. Yeah, we as youth can bring innovative ideas, but there is a lot of knowledge that has been worked through decades of scientists working, and even though we are not from the same generation, that mix of knowledge is very important to promote not only cultural growth, but also to safeguard all this knowledge. And then we're doing this because many communities depend on the coral reefs. This is a picture of me in the area where I'm from, in Gunayala. We depend on the reef for not only food, but also for tourism. And if we don't protect this resilient reef, we're going to lose not only a way of sustaining ourselves, but also, in my case, our culture. And in some degrees, if we lose the reef that protect our islands, we're going to end up losing our islands faster than expected. So thank you very much.
Thank you, David, and also thank you for mentioning how important it is to build capacity for local communities and local people if we want to tackle these challenges and these issues. And especially understanding how territory sometimes doesn't have a strong relationship with the ocean because of these systemic inequalities and some history or some background as well. I know that, for example, in my country, Caribbean people, they do not like the ocean, although they live there by the coastal zone, because when they were coming to my country, they were coming as slaves, and they were, like trying to save themselves from the ocean because they were, just trying to be safe and to be safe at shore. And that's why they don't have a strong relationship with the ocean. So sometimes understanding these inequalities and this history can also help to build capacity and to build a stronger and better connection with local people as well. Veronica, the floor is all yours.
And thank you everyone for being here today. Thank you, Frank, for the invitation. And also as an icebreaker and to get to know each other better, I'm gonna make 5 questions, and if the answer is yes, please raise your hand. So have you been in Mexico before? Okay, which part? Cancun. Let's have you all. Okay, where have you been?
Yes,
Cancun. Okay, and here? La Paz, beautiful. So yeah, Mexico diverse, just as Valeria mentioned. But I want to highlight the importance of getting to know the biodiversity is not only about animals and ecosystems, but cultures and people is important about traveling. But how do we make traveling like carbon neutral and this kind of thing? So who of you speak more than one language? Great. So language barrier, great. Thank you. Who here has been doing scuba diving, surfing, swimming? We all love oceans, that's why we're here. Okay, yeah. That's why also to connecting with nature. We know it's not necessary that you need to swim in order to love the ocean, but that's why we use to connect with these kind of spaces. Who here has a phone, Facebook, Instagram? Yeah, so those tools are very used by young people and also to continue communicating with these geographical barriers and language barriers. So who here feels old, tired? Oh my gosh. At the moment, and it's the first day, so take some water. And the thing here is that this is a panel for young people, and I love when, thank you for being here, because people normally, we like this intergenerational dialogues, not only young women and young men talking to other young people. And I think the word ocean leaders and young leaders, young professionals is suitable for us because we are not young because of the age. You are also young because we're fresh, we're positive, and we are here because we love what we do. So thank you for being here. And yeah. And when Frank invited me to this, I was just thinking how to reflect the work I've been doing, because since the beginning I had to be very honest. Since the beginning, I was just considered as another mini adult rather than a young. So I have a lot of great leaders that since the beginning show me, and they were leaders, no bosses. So they constantly, constantly, do capacity building for me, allow me to participate in projects. So by a young women being inside of all these national scales or regional scales project is allowing me to give spaces for other young people. So I'm gonna be very short because I want to highlight and go to the question. But what I've been doing, like in my role as biologist and socio-environmental consultant, is doing capacity building, regional cooperation, and knowledge exchange. And in this manner, empowering and inspiring all generations and all genders. So one of my work is with the Commission on Environmental Cooperation between Canada, US, and Mexico, especially capacity building on vulnerability on marine protected areas. That was in person, like 10 workshops in the last 5 years. Also virtually, thanks to the pandemic, there's no barriers, so also some of capacity building workshops online with WWF and Mexican government, the ministry. Part of the work I've been doing is focusing on natural protected areas, marine and terrestrials. And on the third Congress of Latin America and the Caribbean, we launched a youth declaration. What was the first time I was involved, like with a lot of young people on my age that just trying to get our voices heard. And our motto and of our declaration was, we demand, because we always ask authorities to respect, but we were also planning to put something on our side. So we demand, we propose, because we were not demanding with the hands empty, but rather trying to give some options and solutions. And we commit, because we recognize ourselves as part of the problem, but also part of the solution. So I was really inspired, and the first time I was part of a regional dialogue with other kind of young people. And after this Congress, 3 important initiatives that were developed was another network, and you can see that people and young women and men love to work on networks, because that's a way of making, we are stronger together. So there was another network launch after that Congress. An initiative that is now the Day of Conserved and Protected Areas for Latin America and the Caribbean region. It's the 17th of October. Has just passed, and it's a way of showing how protected areas not also conserve biodiversity, but also the people. And of course, my work with SOA, it's now a big family, it's wonderful, and having the opportunity to participate in this kind of spaces is always valuable. And we are also seeking like this kind of mentoring is bidirectional, from you to us and us for you. And yeah, Latin America Azul was a summit this year. What is it? It was June, July this year. And yeah, that's it. And also, like for now, I'm on the mangrove breakthrough, so it's kind of the same as the coral breakthrough. We're just starting, and also just to reflect how our activities on the field, you'll all see activities on the field. You were wondering how young people do it to scuba dive, get to the COP. It's because we work, and this kind of, and we work for free, but we need to like start to make our time more valuable. At the end of the day, we also get tired. We are young, but we are humans. So I also make some advocate work on the women, but that's just how it works, because we need to be on everywhere. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for showing us your cases of success and stories on how you're working towards conservation. It is very important in the context of this COP. This is an implementation COP. The idea is to operationalize everything. I think that's the right word. If not, I'm just making it up. The framework that we already have, and so it's important for us to understand what are young people doing towards these targets and how can we support their efforts. Now I want to jump to a panel discussion with the 4 of you. I have prepared some questions to help us to understand how we can navigate the waters of investment, philanthropies, how can we get funding, what are the challenges that we are facing as young people, as young women as well, because we know that that's another layer, as people from the global south, there's a lot of layers in there that the idea is to try to understand better and to see how we can overcome these challenges. So to start, I would like to ask you, how can youth engage and overcome the barriers that one can find when transiting the journey of biodiversity? Would we be able to start with you?
Sure. I think that being indigenous and then being young established many barriers for me when I was 15, 16 years old, finishing high school. And I was very lucky because I got a scholarship by the Panamanian government to study in Switzerland. So I'm a very small percentage of the Panamanian indigenous population that has been able to study abroad and then have better opportunities because of that. Not only because I learned a new language and I was trained in a different way, um, and I think that not many young people have that opportunity. When you're young, and then if you're indigenous or you're black, you have more barriers that can only be surpassed when you have education. So for me, education is a very important tool, not only for integrating the youth, but also to give them the tools to start raising the voice. But then when you started being educated, and then you get into university, and you finish university and you are fresh to start working in conservation or anything you like. As you mentioned before, we often tend to do it for free, and that's a big mistake because then we don't have control of our time. We tend to suffer in different cases mental pressure that affect our health in different ways, and that then adds another barrier to the work that we are doing. On top of course, all the pressure that we have because of the climate emergency. So I think that trying to keep ourselves healthy is very important as well. Trying to manage our time in a proper manner, it's very important. I think that when we're starting and we don't have much experience, we want to do everything we can, and then we left the personal health behind, and I think that's very important to take into account. So again, for me, the two most important things would be to try to get educated, and I don't mean only formal education like going to university or going to school. There are other ways. Sustainable Ocean Alliance is a very important example of how youth can become educated into conservation activities, and then from then how you can interact with funds or with people that can guide you through the projects that you want to conduct.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dimitri. It's definitely super important to keep in mind that education, formal and informal education, these ways, alternative ways to get knowledge as well, is fundamental to understand ecosystems and to walk this path that is biodiversity. Veronica, I would like to go with you on that reflection as well, because I know you're working towards social, environmental issues and trying to link this, and you were also mentioning how you started to work with young people in the policy making and trying to do some sort of stakeholder engagement. And that's part of, I would say, that's part of overcoming one barrier. When you get access to politicians, to decision makers, to people empowered that can make changes along with you and your expertise and your world vision as well, that's overcoming one barrier. So I would like to hear from you as well, your reflections on how can you engage and overcome the barriers that comes when we are walking towards a path of biodiversity.
Thank you. And okay, what did I say before? I think one of the biggest tools we have now, post communication, social media, which are tools you all always attribute to young people. But I think it's emotional intelligence. This part of making ourselves aware about what we are good at, that we need time, that we want to continue growing professional and personally. But I don't know if any of you are know the ikigai concept, the Japanese. Have you heard of ikigai? Okay, I would love to have a diagram, but just Google it. Is ikigai with K, and it's a theory, a Japanese theory that puts together what are you good at, what and what you love, what the world needs, and the fourth is what you can be paid for. So it's a part of putting your passion, your motivation, your skills all together, and then find what is your how to say in Spanish, like your unlock your vision of life. What are you here? And it's not as a romantic part, but also getting to know that if you want to be president, if you want to be someone on the field, do you have the capacity to do so? Are you gonna live with that kind of monetary reimbursement? So it's just kind of a new way of thinking in a long term, self-aware, self-care, and it's not as a romantic as it used to sound, but actually it's important to be aware of what you're capable and to protect others. I'm we just thinking of emotional intelligence and also about this kind of spaces. And a lot of us mentioned, I have the opportunity, I was very lucky, and you can see that as soon as we have the intention, we just make the best of it. So thank you for the invitation because this is one example of what you give to youth, we try to do our best. So that's it.
Wonderful, Veronica. And over to you, Valeria, because you're a young woman, of course. You're leading campaigns in Mexico. You briefly mentioned how Sustainable Ocean Alliance in Mexico is co-leading the campaign against deep sea mining over there. I had the amazing opportunity and privilege to be there and to witness what you were doing to, get rid of the massive ship that was there, pretending to then go to the deep sea and, basically destroy the ocean. So I would like to hear from you, from your experience as well, working towards these initiatives and so on. How do you overcome these barriers and lead these campaigns and make real, tangible changes towards biodiversity, conservation, and all of the issues that actually impact us as society, as humankind?
Well, I will first start with Mexico is a huge country. We are a lot of people there. We are like more than 100 million people in Mexico. But the main part of our population, we are young people and women. So the first thing I would like to highlight is the perseverance of us, because being a woman in a Latin country that is like part of the patriarchy in our main life. Like also my mom, my grandmother used to be in the same system. So it's difficult for us. Also, we don't have an equitative, we have a lot of rich people, well, a lot of inequalities in the population. But the main population, they don't have the money to start a career in Mexico. So it's difficult for us to have a degree, and as a woman, it's more difficult to have it. So starting and preparing yourself with scuba diving to learn how to swim is not easy in Mexico. And if you are coming from one of the biggest cities in all the earth, like it's Mexico City, so you have more difficulties in our life. So the perseverance as a youth woman in Mexico is like the main part of me, and also our the young people that is in SOI Mexico is one of the biggest part, the perseverance. But also, I think for the Sustainable Ocean Alliance in Mexico, one of the biggest part of all these programs that we have developed is the alliances. We have built a really trust alliance in all over the country and with international NGOs too, like Eventos. So we try to have a really strong bond with them so they can continue supporting our programs, like the coral reef restoration, the water monitoring in Baja California. So for us, the two main topics is the perseverance and to build a really trust alliance in Mexico. Yep.
Wonderful. Thank you, Valeria. Sorry, apologies. Thank you, Valle, for also showcasing this and highlighting how alliances, collaboration, partnerships can work very well. And Kevin, I want to go with you because I know that the Kenyan Youth Biodiversity Network has been working towards alliances and partnerships You have initiatives with the Global Landscapes Forum under the Restoration of Seawards Program and the Youth and Landscapes Initiative as well. We've been working together in creating some side events and live events as well under the GLF program and ecosystem as well. So I would like to hear from you, how can young people, can walk this path with alliances? What are you, from your experiences in the field and in the policymaking field, how does these alliances work, and what advice, if any, do you have in terms of understanding how to better walk this path to biodiversity?
Yeah, so first of all, the power of collaboration is a term that young people across the world are starting to embrace. You're seeing more and more youth that are moving studying the climate space, the biodiversity space, because I think the current generation is realizing that if we come together, we stand to benefit more. And in our case, the policy space, for example, even here in the CBD, it has not always been open to young people. It's like the CBD and any other conventions of the UN were not designed to serve civil society or even young people. They were designed for governments. But it is through this consistent noise and that young people that have been making over the years that you can see that even within the CBD now there is a youth pavilion, there is a youth group, there are youth side events happening. This was not the case in 1992 and 1994, the years back. So it means that young people have constantly been pushing the other generations to collaborate with them, to show their value proposition, to show that young people can be also equal partners in the mission. And so this has led to not just the CBD and the policy landscapes to recognize youth, but also governments. Now we're seeing governments having, ministries and departments that want to work with you. We are also seeing organizations, civil society organizations having youth strategies and creating roadmaps of how they want to engage youth, which is really something that's hopeful. On the flip side, though, I feel like as a generation, because we're gonna live to see the full-fledged, devastation of the planet, right? Full-fledged climate catastrophe, full-fledged biodiversity, all this planetary crisis that we're facing, is still uncertain how, when those things unfold, if we still hold together, or everybody will go their own way. Because these things are manifesting in disproportionate ways. The global southern countries, for example, in Africa where I come from, are having a bigger impact on the climate and also the biodiversity loss. And it's like people now are starting to delineate themselves from each other. But we hope that through this continued alliance building where, for example, the Kenyan Youth Biodiversity Group is working with the GLF and several things, we can continue to have a stronger voice that shape policies and organizational strategies.
Perfect, thank you. Thank you, Kevin, for sharing that thoughts on us as well, on how Kenyan Youth is working and what can we learn from them as well. Now, since we are talking about alliances, collaboration, cooperation, these partnerships, I want to jump to a question that the three Rio conventions this year are asking or are trying to answer, and it's about resources. Mobilize the finance. We need money. All of the three Rio conventions are agreeing on the same thing. We need resources in order to tackle the climate crisis, the triple planetary crisis that we're living in. So my question for you, your panelists, is how can you mobilize people and resources towards their project? And now I know this is very broad and very general, but I want to start with you, Dewey, because I know that the WCS is having it's already walking that path. You already showed some of the things that that you are doing, that your projects are doing around the world, and how they're trying to build capacity. So I would like to hear your experience as a young person, as a professional as well, working on that field, and your organization overall, on how can you mobilize people and resources towards their projects.
Nice. I mean, you look at me now, but if you see me in my island, I look very different. I don't have clothes, I don't wear shoes, I'm mostly naked. So growing up in this indigenous town, very small island in the Caribbean, far away from the city, I never thought I was going to study finance, but I did my master's in economics and finance. And then I did my bachelor actually in business. I never wanted to study business. The Kuna people, we have a more communist socialist mentality. But for me, it was important specifically, okay, how do I understand how business world work so I can get funding for the projects that I want to implement. And that's why I actually studied finance and I ended up understanding the business world. And I think the most important thing that we have to understand and admit as young people is to have like a clear goal and a clear plan of what we want to do because there are funds out there, but if you don't know how to ask for those funds you are not going to get them. So there is a lot of capacity building that can be still implemented within young organizations so they can program their activities and their projects in a comprehensive way and in a realistic way because young people often, especially when we start, we have many great ideas that don't get to go to something more tangible and specific. And I think that's what we need. Specific ideas with tangible results and specific budgets on how much you need for doing that. Because often we ask for money, but we don't know how much, we don't know for how long, we don't know in which specific activities. So we have a clear plan. Organizations like WCS or WWF can definitely help at a local level, at a country level, to implement some of the projects that the youth are leading.
Perfect. Thank you, Luigi. And to that, I will also add to have clear in mind that youth is just a stage on the in the life, and if you don't ensure the continuity of your project or initiative, also that adds some sort of risk to investors or to philanthropists or projects in general that might create issues to get that funding. So thank you for your insights.
Yeah,
Over to
thank
you.
you. I think you all have heard a lot of alliances, partnerships, and what I would like to ask for you is that when you work with young people, young men, young women, look us as partners, not as only beneficials. Like you are doing us a favor or giving us an opportunity. Treat us as equal, and then you will see how the equal results will be done. And two important points is that just as you mentioned, identity. Now we work as biologists, but I also wear the Mexican flag, the women flag, and this part of being social or environmentalist is great, and being a hub of people that also reflects a lot of culture is just great. So thank you. And the last part would be that just as I mentioned before about the Ikigai theory, is that we recognize what we are good at, but if we all put together with tangible results, monitoring and evaluation, some kind of indicators, just give us this guidance, improve our projects, do not like giving feedback is also part of making us better. So provide those feedback, advise for us, and then we will continue doing great things with you. And finally, it will be do not duplicate efforts. That's why you always see a lot of networks. And when we meet here, it's the ocean, biodiversity, and we continue building because we don't want to do the same things again, ask for finance, and do the same thing that another network is doing. So these kind of spaces, rather than travel and have some fun, is also for communicating and being networks of networks. So that's it on my side. Thank you.
Thank you. Not to duplicate efforts, to try to create these alliances, to join the efforts in order to overcome challenges, but also to work together towards a bright future, I would say, and towards a healthier ocean as well, and a healthier society. Kevin, your thoughts and reflections around this?
Okay, yeah, resources. So I think that we can continue to advocate for restructuring of the current financing models within the civil society and conservation in general. Youth-led projects usually get like little amount of money, and sometimes it's just one-off, it's a small grant, and that's it. So we need to find an avenue through which we can sustain financial relationships of donor granting relationships that can sustain conservation program. Because restoration of mangroves, for example, cannot happen in one day. You cannot say we restored mangroves in one day or even coral reefs in one day. And so we need to sustain our relationships to have maybe multi-year funding. And this is not just for the granting organization, also within the UN bodies and UN systems. the JEF, for example, recently they announced that about 25% of their money is going to civil society. We need to know how much of that money goes to youth organizations and on what basis. And on our side, as youth organization, I think we need to be better prepared to implement these projects, to accurately and transparently manage the resources that come, even though they could be small, and also to show the impact, because it's building on impact that you have created, and it shows the value of people to invest in you, because there's no free money, right? So people who want to invest in you, if you're doing a good job, so it's time to also be ready to be that bigger.
Wonderful, and we must be ready and get hands on deck and to get the resources to get the money. Valeria, over to you.
Well, here with Sustainable Ocean Alliance in Mexico, we have, as I told you, we built a huge bond with Mexican government and also with initiatives that is funded by young people in Baja California and also in the Peninsula of Yucatan. So we're trying to do this like circular, helping young people that have their own businesses, and also those young people support us in our programs in all around the country. So for us, the collaboration in the hub is really important to start this part of alliances to get this financial, because as you know, we are part of a big global web of young ocean leaders. So we have, we receive small grants like per year or only for one program. So we need to have like continuing to get this financial, and that's why we support these businesses of young people, young women too. And to start this with this bond with the Mexican government, we want to talk with them to make like startups, like initiatives for young people in Mexico, so they can have more opportunities. As you know, Mexico is one of the they have a lot of new businesses building. So we're trying to expand this not only in the Baja California Peninsula or the Yucatan Peninsula. We want to expand this in all around the coastal areas of Mexico. So yeah, to use the power of the bond with the government, and also to support the young businesses like scuba diving centers or the ecotourism that they make.
Thank you, Valeria. Definitely agree with the four of you on the fact that we need more alliances, and that through these alliances we can build amazing things, and also we as young people can understand what better, in a better way, path of investments and funders and resources and mobilization of these things. Thank you to the four of you for this amazing speaking session. We're gonna pass it over to a fireside chat that we have organized that I have with you. But before of that, I would like to ask you if you have any questions to these youngsters right here. Yes.
Plenty actually. I want well, maybe I can introduce myself very quickly. I've done conservation for a couple of years now, 15 years, mostly in Africa, but in the Pacific as well, mostly in the forest. And something I'm always interested to know from other experts, being youth or old, or I don't really take that into consideration, is how we talk a lot about engagement, right? We talk a lot about engaging the government or engaging people, and your work has resulted in deep sea mining. I understand to actually be stopped or something like this. So how do you get to this success? Yes, you have the alliance, but what is the moment that the government that is usually strong and maybe ignoring does change its mentality? What actions or key actions has triggered this change? And same, this change of mind, say Kenya or whichever country, how do you get the people, the community to actually respond positively to what you are actually trying to teach them to do? And I think we all face, sometimes frustration that whichever stakeholder you're working with, that there is this resistance. And sometimes we fail at questioning our methodology, but therefore, how this change can happen. Maybe it's for the two of you, I think Mexico and Kenya.
Valle?
Okay, well, I think that in the past year, it was the last year of the past government, of the past president in Mexico. So in that year, we changed our foreign affairs minister. It became a new one, and it's a woman first, and she's a biologist. So we try to change how the women can lead this type of situations, and also as an NGO, all the alliances that we built with NGOs in Mexico against deep sea mining, it started with the opening of the government. This new part of the government and this new leading government that is with our first woman president in Mexico, it opens really this bond with the young people and also with the women, and we change all the patriarchy that was leading before our country. So these new ideas and this opening help us a lot with this changing mind in our government against deep sea mining, but also the action of the people in all around Mexico. A lot of people in Mexico, they didn't know what is deep sea mining, that this huge boat was in our coast in Manzanillo in the Pacific coast. They don't know, they didn't know. They only see a big boat, but they didn't know that that boat was going to the Clipperton Clarion Zone that is going to explore our seafloor. So we built a huge campaign against deep sea mining to visualize all the issues that they can have this activity in Mexico. As you know, Mexico is one of the closest countries to the Clarion Clipperton Zone in the Pacific Central, and really close to the Mexican economic zone is that we have some concessions of the ISA. So if this activity of deep sea mining starts, Mexico is one of the countries that they will have more threats in on the seafloor. So we built this bond against deep sea mining with the government, but also to show all the people interest in our marine ecosystem, because as you know, Mexico City is the biggest city in Mexico, and it's in the middle part. The 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 sea that is closest to the city is like 5 hours driving. So in Mexico City, they don't know, they don't have these bonds with the ocean. So we started to doing these events in Mexico City, in La Paz, in Baja California, and also in the part of the Caribbean, to start showing what is deep sea mining, what is our beautiful biodiversity, marine biodiversity. As you know, close to the Clarion Clipperton Zone, it's the archipelago of Revillagigedo. It's one of the most beautiful marine protected areas in all the Pacific. They are known as the Galapagos of the North. So yeah, we want to start and raise awareness and all this biodiversity that is in that zone, like cetaceans, the big sharks. So yeah, showing all these wonderful things that we have in Mexico, to start working with the government. Yeah.
Yeah, so a behavioral change is not something that happens just once, like a slap. People will stop cutting mangroves at once in the entire community, but it starts with one person changing the other person, changing the homestead, and changing the entire village. And for us as a youth-led organization, we did not, when we started our mangrove restoration project, we did not pretend to know more than the community knows. And we tried to get into this space with an open mind of learning from each other, to also understand what was driving deforestation. Yes, I started by saying that we lost 450 hectares of mangroves, but then what were the underlying factors? So people were cutting mangroves to take their kids to school, to construct homesteads. So, from that angle of engagement, you can also reason with the other person to understand their needs, right? And so we had a series of intergenerational dialogues to try and understand how could we then collectively restore these areas? What other incentives could we use instead of having to cut a full-blown mangrove to sell it to take the kid to school? How could we, for example, start honey? Now we have like hives within the mangroves that we have restored, like beehives. Um, Mangroves are also good, fish breeding areas, but also new challenges emerge every day. So, for example, when the mangroves get to around 1 meter, 1.5 meters, there is a species of snail that goes to live under the roots. And this snail, the fisher people, they use it as a bait because in Kenya we still use the line and hook fishing for subsistence fishing. So they will go and approach the entire mangrove to get the snail to go and fish with it. So you see, this is a new challenge that has emerged recently, and now that is what we're trying to engage the communities on. But the good thing is that for the communities that we have been working with to restore the mangroves, they are now, training on creating this awareness within themselves and trying to, reduce this uprooting of mangroves for the we call it in English, for the snails that use them as baits. And so, yes, we're changing our generation in terms of ideologies and leadership, but also we're trying to reason with the community and what mangroves used to mean to them and what it will mean to them if they lost the entire landscape and what it will mean to their kids as well. So it's a process, it's a journey, it's not something you can just set up like and then start with it, right?
Thank you for your question. Anyone else? Oh, okay. Let's go with you, then we'll pass it over to you and ask you again.
So I work with a community-based and youth-led coral restoration organization in Bristol, so I'm kind of asking this question on their behalf. But I'm curious if you have any recommendations for like specific programs or grants they can apply to that maybe even like specifically dedicated for youth-led projects in Latin America that can help them with like capacity building or like getting resources directed to their project.
I think we're going to talk a little bit about that in a minute, but Sustainable Ocean Alliance, I already know them, but there is a very interesting mentorship program, and there are several courses that they offer throughout the time, and also some funding, I understand, right?
Yes, Sustainable Ocean Alliance has an accelerator program and some sort of funding for initiative that goes towards ocean conservation and all that. If I may also add, I work with another organization as an advisor called the Iris Project. I can give you more information later. We work as a trust-based philanthropy, and we provide also funding for projects that goes around protecting and restoring nature as well. And since we work as a trust-based philanthropy, we ask basically nothing more than just like a few reports and so on to ensure that the funding is going towards the causes that we need the most. But thank you. Now, yeah, go ahead.
Hi, thanks for all your presentations. My name is Jeremy. I'm from Pacífico Ocean Awareness Programs. We're the world's largest youth environmental program for the creative arts. And so one of our new initiatives is a fellowship. We're providing funding to youth around the world, doing talks in local communities, but with a creative arts lens. And I'm curious, the conversation you had about financing, because we're having this internal conversation too about sustainability. Not just one-off grants, but then be able to have the funds to give it, for multiple years. But then that weighs how many people can you actually give money to, and do you give it to less people but for longer, or do you give it to more people but for less time? I'm curious if you have thoughts on that. Of course, the ideal world would be just more money in general, but our budgets are often limited, and so I'm curious what you think about that.
Well, can you repeat again the last part of the question?
Basically the balance between being able to provide more youth funding versus less youth but for longer amount of time. If you have
I think that it will depend on the way the projects are structured, because I've seen programs that are funded very well, but by the end of the year they don't finish all the budget that they have, and that represents a big issue because then we cannot go to the donors to ask for more money if they haven't spent what they have. So I think that it's very important in the planning stage of any project, youth or any other NGO project, to understand what are the capabilities, the real capabilities of your team based on the goals or the objectives that you have. And I would always try to go for projects that have more funding but have clear, specific, and obtainable goals in a specific time period.
Yes.
Yeah, so I think it depends on the projects that you want to fund. It is just like trainings and stuff, you can have like, you can fund several organizations. But for things that take time, like restoration, if you're funding restoration projects, I would rather go for a small number of organization grantees and then work with them the journey. Because you realize that restoration is not something that this organization will just do today and tomorrow if the project is done. They need, for example, to plant members, but also to gap on those where they fail to germinate. Same landscapes, of course, sometimes don't have 100% germination. You have to go back to where the planted is and then to recap. So working with the journey with a few organizations will have probably bigger impact and value for your money than spreading small donations across. Yeah.
Wonderful. Now, let's go with you.
I was in an event about deep sea mining in the UK a few years ago. And in there were two motions. One motion was for more research to allow deep sea mining, and the other motion was just ban it. There is no need to do any research. So I was wondering, in your experience in Mexico, what were the challenges in the previous government? Why they were not listening to your voice? And I have another question. Should I ask it now or okay? It's not more of a question, but a few months ago I had a chance or an opportunity to give a webinar to GVI in Puerto Morelos, I think. And I just wanted to let you know that I want to open a door for collaboration, and I will be in Reef Futures in Mexico this summer. So I would be happy to work more with you and share more from our experience in restoration, coral restoration.
Thank you. Well, this opening with this new government starts like in 2022 because we came to the UNOP. We've been part of the delegation of the UNOP, so we had that chance to talk with them like really close. This is happening with the deep sea mining. We have these topics that we want to include in our pronunciation as a young people. So we start building this relationship with them to start giving them some data, like scientific data and scientific. So I try to do a research and give them tools so they can start put it in the statement that they have built. So I guess this opening since 2022 helped us to start this bond and work with them really close. In Mexico, we are trying to get more money from the government so they can do a research in all the Pacific parts. And also we have a reserve that is called Mexico Profundo, like the Mexico. We want to start that the government continues this research or affiliates with like the Smith Ocean and scientifics, so they can start this collaboration and have more information, not only in Mexico, but in all the client keepers and so on. So we want to start these alliances to talk with the government so they can start building some collaborations and alliances, not only in the scientific part, but also talk with the indigenous people in Mexico. We have a huge part of indigenous people in the coast, in Oaxaca, also in Sonora with the Ceres in the Tiburon Island. So we want to collaborate also with them to start this mobilization around the issue of deep sea mining, but how we can involve all the parts. Yes, so that's the main part to start building this bond against humanity. Also, we are trying to be connect with the Mexican delegation that is in the ISA, also in the Europe and here in the COP. We try to bring all that theme to all the negotiations.
Thank you.
And we will love to collaborate in Puerto Morelos and in the Caribbean with you. So I don't know if Vero wants to say something.
No.
Okay.
Perfect.
I think you have one question.
I have two questions.
Okay, wonderful.
So, muchas gracias por el diálogo tan lindo que han tenido y traer la historia de México, que es muy importante. I don't know if you have a story, Mexico experience. My question would be, in your experience, what would be the enabling conditions, the main two enabling conditions that you need to be part of the formal governance structures of FBAs or OECs, for being part of making decisions of the management of our resources? And the second one is, we both mentioned, what are the political structural barriers that youth women face in this space of opening spaces in international agenda, but as well as national agendas for marine conservation? I'm sorry, my name is Pamela Castillo, and I'm the Territorial Marine Director of OECs.
Yes, sir. Okay, thank you. A really good questions. But I would say that just a previous question on how to distribute the money. More people, less money, or more money to less people, I think. The answer is quite the same depending on the species of the project. But in my experience, what has given me more opportunities is building on leadership and capacity building. But it will depend on what are you good at. And some of my colleagues are very good at negotiation, so take the opportunity to be in this kind of spaces for negotiation, give them the skills. In my case, it's train of trainers. Like, I love to do the know-how and then communicate because I'm a social person. But there are other young people that are scientific, so give them some scholarships to continue the doctorate, postdoctorate. So I think you just need to analyze and stress what each person and individual, or at least networks, are good at. And I think for now, like, we also have social media connections, great leaders inside our organization. So it should just be a quick profile study on what the person and the group needs. But thank you for the question, because that's, you're thinking of the next step. And for the barriers, I don't know if someone wants to reply.
Well, being a woman in the conservation and in the ocean, I've seen that in Mexico, in the part of La Paz, all the conservation programs or NGOs, they are only led by men, all men. And also, when I started to come to these conferences, I've seen the same, all men and white. So it is really important to start building this like relationship with the young people, also with the young girls in Mexico. One of our team members of SOI Mexico built an NGO in Mexico that is called Mujeres, Niñas y Biodiversidad, that is in Yucatan. Pamela leads that NGO, and she's starting to mobilize in Mexico with the early generations, like the girls with their mothers, their grandmothers in that local part of Yucatan. And I think that we have to start connecting with the early generations to the older generations with women in Mexico, because they have, the older generations have really a different kind of knowledge, because also we know that in Mexico it's patriarchy, but all the Mexicans respect their mother. So, and Latin culture, they respect the mother. So we have a really conflict in that bond, being as a woman in Latin America, because in our family we feel the respect, but if we're outside of our family, we are nothing. Like, it's really difficult to have this success or to have these opportunities in a Latin American country, because I also don't came with the privilege in my family. So all my family, I teach them from my family to start this perseverance career, to start doing what I love. Yes, I'm here because of that. So that's my vision as a woman, but I know Vero has another vision of this.
And just one final thought, and I really do want to like give recognition to other generations because normally when I speak about the frustration of being a woman and Latin, I'm not indigenous, permanently or black. That's why like sometimes they recognize me as other kind of woman. But the work done before by other generations, not only on women pathway, but also cultural. For example, we're seeing breastfeeding rooms, meditation rooms in these kind of spaces is also building and opening to other kind of participation. So I think the part is not done yet, but I do need to thank what has been done already. So thank you for leading the path and allowing us to be here today. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you to all of your questions. Thank you to our amazing speakers. Now I invite you to join as part of the people in here. And I'm gonna stay with you for like 10 minutes.
Yeah.
For a panel.
Let's try to aim for 8 minutes.
Let's try to aim for like 8 minutes or less. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Do it. First of all, you already told us about your journey in nature, how you started in business, and all of that. I want to know what challenges did you face early in finding the right support for your initiatives?
So when I started working on climate awareness in Panama was 8 years ago. After I went to an international conference where I learned that the Kuna people were the first documented case of an indigenous group that were forced to move because of climate change. And when I went back to Panama and I started thinking of how we can communicate this issue, I realized that I was the only person talking about this. And this was in the year 2014. At that time, Greta Thunberg didn't exist. She was probably in kindergarten. So climate change wasn't a topic that was on the table for either public policy or the private enterprise. Now it's a different story. But I faced a lot of discouraged, depression. I was depressed for 2 years. I became suicidal at some point, and I didn't want to do anything with climate because I felt very powerless. Not only because the government wasn't doing anything in that regard, at that time I was working in the government of Panama, and I touched the doors of the Minister of Environment, the Minister of Tourism, the Minister of Economy and Finance, and no one wanted to work on climate issues. But then I realized that I had a good amount of friends that were willing to support a project to communicate the impacts of climate change. And that was the first thing that helped me get out of the darkness. And it was realizing that I could put together a team of people that would support me on a project, working with the indigenous group, and especially with kids, to communicate how these kids were the first documented case of an indigenous group of kids that we're not going to be able to continue with their traditional lifestyle because they are going to lose their islands. And then when I realized that no one was doing anything, that was a moment when I realized that I had to do something. And I think at that time I was brave enough to enter into a field that was very unknown for me. And at that time, again, I was putting money from my own pocket, my time, it wasn't paid, it wasn't recognized, until I had the idea well structured enough, with objectives, with the amount of people that I was going to impact, with the community that we were going to work with a medium and long-term plan. And I was able to ask for funding. I applied for funds for the Ford Foundation, and we got like $15,000 to work on a project for 6 months. But it was only until I had a very clear goal, a very clear group of people that were going to work with me on achieving that goal, and a very clear budget on how much I needed to make awareness of climate change, which is what we did we have been doing for 8 years already. But once I knew how, when, and how I wanted to do that, I was able to ask for money and to get the funding. So again, the funds are there. It's a matter of connecting our passion with this, in this case, sustainable development goals or whatever framework that we are talking about. If we connect our passions as young people and then we present realistic activities and projects to donors, believe me, we can get the funding.
Wonderful. And because of the matter of the time, I just have one more question for you. Because you were talking, and we've been talking about funding and projects and all of these. That sounds very general. I want to know specific types of funding available for marine biodiversity projects. How do young leaders navigate these options? Can you help us on that?
For sure. I wrote some notes on this, and there are several organizations that target specifically young people. We talk about Sustainable Ocean Alliance, and for those of you that don't know Sustainable Ocean Alliance, I would recommend you to go to their website.
Please do.
They not only offer grants, but they also offer mentorship to help young people succeed in their projects. And crowdfunding is also a powerful tool for young solutionists. There are many websites and different options like GoFundMe, where through social media we can raise funds as well. And also, if we align our projects with the Sustainable Development Goals, we can focus our projects to show impact and how we can benefit local communities. We can then knock on the doors of international organizations in different countries like WWF or Wildlife Conservation Society. And we as young people don't or shouldn't be afraid to ask for mentorships and collaborations and partnerships. Because believe me, these big organizations are willing to open the doors when the right projects are there and those projects are aligned with the visions or the goals of the global organizations. And then last but not least, at a government level in the ministries of environment, now there are more and more funding that the governments are receiving to be implemented by young people. So also be in contact with your local government. And now I think that it's also very important for us young people to become part of the policy making bodies. Like we have to be part of the government, even if we don't like it. We have to be part of it. And when we are there, then we can make sure that we can mobilize funds for other young people. That's what I'm trying to do at WCS and Wildlife Conservation Society now that I'm leading the global strategy for coral reef conservation. Based on my experience and based on what I've been talking to colleagues and friends from Western Indian Ocean or Asia, we're getting all this knowledge and we're putting it into a framework that can be implemented by all WCS countries that we work with. And WCS has offices in more than 50 countries. We're focusing on 18 countries that work with corals, but if I'm not in WCS and I'm not young and I haven't passed by all the experiences that I've mentioned before, probably the strategy that we're going to have wouldn't be what it is now. So we have to be in the table, negotiating, and making our voices be heard.
Absolutely, and I want to close with that debate. Definitely, what young people needs is not just our voices to be heard, it's our voices to be at the table, not only in the policy making processes, but also in framework in these initiatives and these funding opportunities from philanthropists and organizations as well. So thank you for your thoughts on that, and thank you to all of you for joining us today on this wonderful side event. Let's give ourselves a round of applause. Because in this way we are officially open the Four Corals Pavilion. So
Yes.
Personally, for me, it's an honor. I know that for you as well, but for Sustainable Ocean Alliance as a whole, it's an honor to be here and to be officially opening this wonderful pavilion. If I may add, I invite you to check the agenda because it's looking great. The events that they are hosting during this week. So thank you for having us today, and have a wonderful rest of the day. Enjoy the negotiations.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you so much. Hey, we should take a picture, the four of them.
Quick picture, you have another seven.
No,